the years, we've seen a lot of changes in music, not just in the way that it sounds, but also in the way that it's heard. From radio to vinyl to cassette to CD to MP3 and now streaming, the median of music has certainly evolved. Now, in many ways, to many people, this is a good thing. It's now a lot more convenient to listen to your favorite songs. No longer do we have to worry about flipping between side A and B, scratches, skips, rewinding, the annoying repetition of a broken record, or rushing to the radio to dub a song. But even though it's a lot easier to consume music, there are some privileges we've had to forfeit. We've lost our sense of ownership. An album can be here today and gone tomorrow just like that, even if it's something that we've paid for. We've also lost access to things like liner notes, where we could see the artist's expression of gratitude, photos, lyrics, album credits. Now we're kind of just left guessing. This is why we're seeing such a growing movement going back toward physical media. Another issue that arises, which brings us to the point of this video, is that many albums, countless albums really, never made the transition from physical to digital, and many are at risk of becoming lost media. It's been my goal over the past couple years to mitigate this issue to the best of my ability. Since 2020, I've been collecting CDs, cassettes, vinyl records, books, magazines, VHS, and DVDs. At first, it was just for my own pleasure, but since I started Aloe Gospel Music, I've wanted to share my treasures with the rest of the world and do a small part in preserving history. So now, here are 10 gospel albums that you can't find on streaming. First up is Standard by Witness. Released in 1991, this may be one of their biggest albums. It includes tracks like Get in the Way, Safety, and of course the title track, Standard. Now, many of the songs that I named, or the 3 songs that I just named, actually can be found on streaming because they're part of Witness's compilation called We Give Thanks, but the remaining 7 songs are nowhere to be found on streaming or the internet. Awesome Wonder by Carr. Once again, I think this may be one of his biggest albums, with songs like I Almost Let Go, Awesome Wonder, In the Sanctuary. It's really a surprise and a shame that this album can't be found on Apple Music or Spotify. You can find a few of the biggest hits on compilations, but you're really missing out on the rest. In addition to the album, it's also virtually impossible to find the live video recording. But you can find it on Aloe Gospel Music's Patreon channel, along with a lot of other cool stuff. Dallas-Fort Worth Mass, as the name suggests, is a mass choir from Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, made up of over 100 church choirs. In the early days, you may have seen them under the direction of Kirk Franklin. In 1998, they released an album entitled I'd Rather Have Jesus. I became familiar with this CD because of the title track and another song called Blessed Assurance. Now, you can find both of these songs on a lot of other compilations and CDs, but as for the full album, you can't find it anywhere on streaming. After writing and playing for commission, Eric and Anson Dawkins decided to make a group of their own. So in 1991, they released their self-titled debut album. A true product of the early 90s, you can definitely hear the similarities between Dawkins and Dawkins and Commission's sound at the time. In fact, Fred Hammond was one of the executive producers. Dawkins and Dawkins went on to record 3 more albums and make a name for themselves in the music industry. However, their debut album has never set foot into the digital age. On a Facebook post, Anson Dawkins was asked why this was the case, and he stated that the issue was in the hands of A&M Records. Donnie McClurkin's 1996 debut album has been on Apple Music for as long as I can remember. So you can imagine my surprise when I was looking for Jesus at the mention of your name, and I couldn't find it. It had disappeared. I'm not sure why this happens. I'm sure it's something legal, but usually when an album comes off of Apple Music, you can still find a lot of the bigger hits on compilations, and Apple Music will automatically replace those in your playlist. However, that was not the case. I could not find the original versions of songs like Stand or Speak to My Heart. I actually thought I found Speak to My Heart still there, but when you play it, it's actually a completely different song by an artist named Great. Speaking of Donnie McClurkin, if you're a true fan of gospel music, you may remember the intro to his album Live in London. While the announcer is sharing his bio, she mentions a song called I Am from the Prince of Egypt soundtrack. Now, if you look up the Prince of Egypt soundtrack, you're likely only going to find the Hans Zimmer version, the version that's used in the film. However, there is another version called Prince of Egypt Inspirational that has been hidden and perhaps forgotten. I discovered this CD at a Second and Charles, and I realized that this must be what was being referenced in Live in London. I find it kind of ridiculous that this album hasn't been talked about more because it includes a wide array of artists that were very popular at the time, including Fred Hammond, Kirk Franklin, DC Talk, Take Six, and CeCe Winans. Boyz II Men's I Will Get There is featured on this compilation, and it is also where Mary Mary got their start. LaMore, or the LaMore brothers, were an R&B style gospel quartet from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They released their self-titled debut album in 1995. I don't know how I discovered LaMore. I think I heard one or two of their songs on a YouTube playlist, but I liked what I heard, and I couldn't find it anywhere else on the internet. So I decided to go ahead and order the CD. Eventually, I started Aloe Gospel Music, and I believe this is one of the first albums I ever posted. The videos actually did pretty well because I think a lot of people had been looking for these songs for a long time, and I was the only channel that I had the whole CD. For logistical reasons, I had to move those videos over to my second channel, AGM Radio. And as I was looking through the comments on that channel, I saw a couple people saying under the song Wanna Love You More that Jacob Lattimore's post on Facebook had brought them there. So I went over to Facebook to see what everyone was talking about. Jacob Lattimore is a singer slash actor mostly known for The Shy. In his post, he shared that his BET Awards outfit was inspired by the outfits worn by LaMore in one of their concerts, and that he was wearing it in honor of his late uncle, Anthony Lattimore Jr. He also included a link to the song Wanna Love You More, which just happened to be on AGM Radio. So that was kind of cool. I'm just glad I was able to put those out there for everyone to enjoy. If you know gospel music, especially gospel choirs, then you're familiar with Donald Lawrence, and most likely know him for his work with the Tri-City Singers, Donald Lawrence and Company, Karen Clark Sheard, and many more. But just before becoming a well-known choir director, he was in a group called Company. I discovered this group on a Gospel New Jack Swing YouTube playlist. Their first and last album, entitled Devotion, was released in 1993 and included songs like Angel, Somebody's Praying for You, and a cover of Stevie Wonder's Love's in Need of Love. There's also a track called Superman, which was re-recorded by the Tri-City Singers on their album TriCity4.com. Tri-City released their first album in 1993 as well, and their success may be why Company's tenure was so short-lived. During his last few years with Commission, Fred Hammond decided to pursue a solo career. So in 1991, he released his debut solo album, I Am Persuaded. While it doesn't hit quite as hard as some of his later work, in my opinion, it's still a very solid album. Some of my favorite songs include Mender of Broken Hearts, That's What I'll Do to Keep on Loving You, and I Came to Jesus as I Was. So I was surprised and disappointed to see that this album was no longer on streaming. I've noticed that a lot of albums have fallen to the same fate around the same time. Commission is a renowned gospel group that really needs no introduction. With a career that lasted over a decade and a legacy that will last a lifetime, Commission has 10 albums under their belts. But with all the influence and accolades, there's one thing that has stuck out to me ever since I became a fan. Their very first album, I'm Going On, released in 1985, has never been on streaming. Of course, you can still find songs like I'm Going On, Unworthy, or 'Tis So Sweet, but other tracks like The City or I Can See Jesus are nowhere to be found. It's actually not just an issue of streaming, but the album itself is actually very difficult to find. For years, you could only find one or two copies of the LP for like over $100. It's a little easier to find a few more vinyl copies now, but I've also noticed that there's a lack of reprints. There's no CDs, no cassettes, or anything floating around out there. It's kind of surprising that the album that started it all is on the brink of becoming lost media. So here's the recap. Standard by Witness, Awesome Wonder by Carr, I'd Rather Have Jesus by Dallas Fort Worth Mass, Donnie McClurkin's debut album, Dawkins Dawkins' debut album, The Prince of Egypt soundtrack, Fred Hammond, I Am Persuaded, Devotion by Company, and I'm Going On by Commission. Now, I just listed a lot of albums that are nowhere on streaming, but don't be discouraged. I made this video because I have good news. Every single one of these albums is available for your listening pleasure on my new channel, AGM Radio. If you've been following Aloe Gospel Music for a while, then it's probably because of the rare songs and albums I've been posting. I wanted to share all the songs in my collection, but honestly, I got a little carried away. This channel was always supposed to be more about reviews, commentary, and sparking up conversation. So I decided it was finally time to make a transition from posting music to making more original content. But I didn't want to rob my audience of the music that drew them in. Thus, AGM Radio was born. And from here on out, it will be the prime destination for all your musical needs. But I hope that you will follow both channels. I added a link to the channel and links to all these albums in the description, so go subscribe and listen now. I promise Aloe Gospel Music and AGM Radio have what you're looking for. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, feel free to leave your thoughts and memories in the comments. I really love hearing from you. That's all for me today. I'll see you in the next video.